arguing the Russians were involved in our election. But rather than collusion, it was more about disruption than anything else. Vice President and SPG and former CIA officer Daniel Hoffman served in Moscow, and he joins us now to explain. Daniel, thanks for joining us this morning. We noted a op-ed you wrote in the New York Times on this very subject. Lay out the argument you're making about what the real Russian involvement was.
Well, I served in Moscow for 5 years and devoted a good portion of my CIA career to tracking Russian intelligence. And this operation really is straight from the Russian intelligence playbook, and it really shouldn't come as much of a surprise given that President Vladimir Putin was served in the KGB, was director of the FSB, and in this case, I believe he mounted an influence operation. So when we consider the facts...
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
No, so continue. Just what is in their playbook then? What did they try to do? And I cut you off, sorry.
Yeah, well, I think in this case, what they sought to do was to leave a trail of breadcrumbs leading directly from Trump Tower to the Kremlin, with an eye towards connecting our electoral process to the Kremlin. I think in Vladimir Putin's estimation, that would be the best way to not only soil our electoral process, but also induce a media feeding frenzy, which would then interfere with our governing process.
So your argument, it was less about beating Hillary Clinton or helping Donald Trump, and more about ensuring that from the outside it looked like we're in disarray here in America and our election process is not legitimate.
Yes, I think with an eye towards muddying our democratic institutions, as well as focus on his own March 2018 elections, I think that was Vladimir Putin's goal. And when you consider the Russians who attended the June 2016 meeting, they were all essentially connected to the Kremlin. The lawyer, Natalia Veselnitskaya, had lobbied on behalf of the FSB against the Magnitsky Act. Akhmetshin had served in the Soviet military. That added a measure of intrigue. And Agaralov was the son of an oligarch who's very close with Vladimir Putin. And so this was an easily discoverable connection to the Kremlin, which is exactly what I believe President Putin would have wanted. And
some of these leaks that we've seen, do you believe they're coming from the Kremlin as well, seeking to throw breadcrumbs out and make sure that the coverage reflects that? Or Democrats, frankly, make this a big issue through investigations?
I'm not sure where exactly the leaks are coming from. I do believe it would be in the interests of the Kremlin to create the conditions for the leaks to occur. And one way they would have done that was this email trail, starting with the Rob Goldstone email, which really was a very provocative and, again, very discoverable email. Had the Russians wanted to establish a clandestine channel for collusion, then they could have done so with deep cover operatives, which is certainly a quiver in their espionage bow. They've got a significant number of intelligence officers in the United States, and they certainly could have done that, but they chose not to, and I believe deliberately.
So, Daniel, you were a former CIA station chief. You served in Moscow as well as Iraq and Pakistan. Based on your judgment, looking at all of this and with your experience, was there an intent to collude from the Trump administration?
My late father, who was an assistant U.S. district attorney, always taught me to look hard at the facts and ask the right questions. And at this point, from everything I have seen, I see no evidence of collusion. I'll leave it for others to comment on the strategy of one campaign or another, or the tactics and behavior of specific campaign officials. But I believe that looking at it from the optic of Russia's own strategy and tactics and goals, I think that the Russians were interested perhaps in weaponizing this information they obtained through cyber and through their intelligence operations, but I don't believe they needed to do it through a campaign.
Because they ultimately remain a geopolitical foe of freedom and of the United States of America. Daniel Hoffman, if you want more on this, you can check out his op-ed in the New York Times on July 28th. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.